So on the last video, we talked about a lot, and it took a while, but I don't feel bad because first of all, it was two objectives that actually works for two different content assessments, and it also is a very important thing. It should matter to you. It should matter to the earth. It should matter to everybody because our future depends on it, right? And so, as a science teacher, I wouldn't do a good job if I had done any less. But still, I did forget to mention something that's going to be very helpful for anyone who's actually trying to pass the test. So let's go over that one more time. But before we do, remember, you have to not need to know all these things by heart. There's no that's not necessary to memorize them all and know which categories they go into. But it is necessary to be able to recognize when you're given an example, which type of service is it? And remember, provisioning is when you're getting something, a product, a physical thing, a good that keeps you alive, versus regulating, which are benefits that have to do with maintaining and regulating the stability of the ecosystem itself, right? So, for example, you wouldn't be able to make the food, which is the provision, without the actual climate being okay and without the nutrients being in place and pests not being attacking and pollinators doing their job. So all of those features make it possible for you to get provisions. And then at a layer above that, even you have the idea of supporting services. And that's why in these diagrams, they are in the center here and at the bottom of the other ones, because it's basically everything that allows all the other services to be possible. So you wouldn't be able to have any of these services without plants doing photosynthesis or nutrients being cycled through the ecosystem, right? And so it's these things that actually maintain the diversity itself, which in turn allows you to regulate and allows you to have provisions. Lastly, that was the idea of the cultural value, right? What we learn from it, what it does to our spirit, and how much fun we can have with it, and the heritage that we leave behind, and all of those other touristy, existentialist principles. Now, all of these can have an effect on the economy, and remember that the effect might not be immediate because sometimes the cost comes out much later, and that's why we have to invest now to make sure we have a future left. But the part that I wanted to talk about that I forgot was actually that the flavor of the questions you're going to get matters in the approach that you take can help you pass the content assessment. Now, the way you should approach the questions is that you should see if it's a question about the loss of diversity or a question about the value of the diversity. If it's a question about its value, then you're obviously looking for answers which match that tone. So if the question is about what's good about diversity, you want answers which are good. So you eliminate any answer that sounds bad, that sounds like it's a bad thing happening to you, right? And likewise, another thing that they do a lot is that they give you good answers which aren't related to the question. So, for example, yes, it's good to have plants to prevent the soil from eroding. But if the question was about tourism and the effects of plants for tourism, that might not be the answer you're looking for, right? Yeah, sure, if there's a lot of erosion, no one's going to think it's pretty. But you're looking for an option that is directly attached to the question, right? So the answer choices need to match not just in tone, but in content to the question. So you see that if you find another one that is right, if there's two that sound right, it's the one that's on topic that's going to be right, but it's only going to be right if it matches the tone. Likewise, if you're looking for negative effects of losing diversity, which is only going to apply for the one that's humans and biodiversity, there's not that many questions about that on the other content assessment on ecosystem diversity. But either way, if there's a loss of diversity, that's a negative thing. So you're looking for options which sound negative, sound like negative things are happening. Match the tone. And then make sure the content matches too. It's on topic. If two seem right, make sure the one that's closely related to the question is the one you're picking. So I wanted to show you like one example of this so that we can actually understand what I'm talking about. So this is an actual test question, right? So an ecologist argues that marine ecosystems provide climate regulation services, which best supports this argument. Now, remember, what I'm looking for here is a match in tone. So this sounds like it's a positive effect of life. So I'm looking for answers which are also positive. And also, just because they're positive, they might not be the right answer. They have to be matching in content as well. And that's what you're going to look for. So marine ecosystems serve as vacation destinations. Yes, that's true. That's positive. But what does it have to do with climate regulation? You see what I'm saying? It doesn't match the content, even though it matches the tone. Marine ecosystems are a source of fish and seafood. Yes, but that does not match the content because I'm talking about climate. So I need something that has to do with climate. Marine ecosystems are home to algae and other photosynthetic organisms. Yes, that's important for as a supporting service. But again, not the content. And the last one here says marine ecosystems store large amounts of carbon. All right, all that has an effect in the ecosystem. By the way, I actually forgot to mention that, even though I spent 24 minutes talking about examples, which is why I picked this question on purpose, because the oceans of the world store way more carbon than the air does. And so marine ecosystems serve as a place where between the carbonate that's in carcasses of algae and shellfish and water that's actually, the carbon that's actually gets dissolved in water and runoff from the continents that dumps even more carbon in the oceans. Carbon is where water is where most of the carbon that gets emitted ends up. So it's a very important regulating service that gets provided. And because I forgot to mention it, I picked this option, this question as an example to actually also talk about the key features of making sure you match the tone and content. So I didn't show you a question that had a mismatch, a tone, but let's say, for example, they were asking for positive effects of pollinators. And then they said something like, the action of pollinators reduces the decomposition, which makes nutrient cycling go slower. That would be nonsensical because I'm looking for a positive effect and the option is giving me a negative. And so I'm obviously not going to pick that, right? And so that's what I meant by matching the tone. You certainly saw an example of matching content. And so now you're ready to go. Make sure to do your best and take your time taking the assessment. Good luck, and I'll see you next time. Do anything that will make your mama proud. Mother Earth. Save the planet.